Hey guys, welcome to my first podcast episode, and I feel like I need to give you some big introduction. I'm not really big on like fluffer pieces, so I'm kind of just gonna wing it. I mean, a little bit of, I guess let's talk about my history real quick, just so you know who I am, and kind of get an idea of where I'm coming from with this podcast. Excuse me. So, my name is Jacob, and I actually do YouTube videos. I have a, I'd call it mildly successful YouTube channel that essentially goes, it's an instructional video type thing. I don't want to say the name of the channel because I really am trying to sort of keep them separate. And I don't want to come across as shilling or any of that stuff, but anyhow, so I guess the context of that is to say that I have some experience talking on camera. I know what I should and should not be doing, but I am maybe not that great at following those rules all the time. It's actually really difficult to not say ums and ahs and so, and there are all these little rules that, like, one of them is saying all the time. I'm really bad about that. And with YouTube, I can go through and edit them out. But with this podcast, I've really decided I'm not going to do that. I'm really going to focus on a sort of stream of consciousness style recording. And if there are problems in it, well then, I'm human. And that's part of being human is, I think, sort of owning up to your mistakes. So bear with me if that really triggers you, then I don't know what to tell you. Okay, so let's back up a second here and talk about the purpose of this podcast. I have two young girls. I am in my sort of early mid-30s, and my oldest is already getting to the age to where she's kind of asking about what things were like when I was a kid. And I got to thinking about this and realized that as someone who grew up in the 90s, stuff has changed drastically. I mean, our entire lives have just totally changed. And I remember growing up, my grandfather, he was one of these like really stereotypical, the world is so different nowadays and you don't know how good you have it. And at the time I heard the words he said, he passed, but I have a ton of respect for my grandfather. But I kind of was like, whatever, granddaddy, okay, yeah, things can't be that much different. But now, sitting here only in my mid-30s, I've realized that the world does change, and very, very quickly. I'm certainly not old. I mean, I guess maybe some, people who are younger than me may say I'm old, but, I'm not old yet. And, but just seeing it is astonishing, and I kind of can't help but to wonder if there's some interest in people hearing about how things were, especially in the 90s. And I think this is like a really pivotal moment for our society, and I'll get into why a little later on, but this era is specifically something, it's just something almost indescribable. And I don't think we saw anything like that through the 2000s or through the 2010s. This really was just a moment, socially, culturally, just from any perspective, where we as a society got to see some really amazing things, and those things changed us very permanently. So, excuse me. So what actually got me thinking about doing this podcast was I recalled a moment. I was very young. I was probably 4. And it was basically we had, and I'll kind of get into more detail later. I want to talk about sort of 90s stuff in this first episode, and then I'll get into personal stuff probably in the later episodes. So to sort of set the stage for this, my dad was a contractor, and back then that was pretty decent money. He was able to buy us. We had like a TV. Of course, it was a wood cabinet, like ancient. I think it was color. This was really the era where Now, at this point in time, we didn't have a ton of money. We did have this one TV, and that was the only TV in our house, but plenty of people still had black and white TVs. So that's kind of the era that we're in. This is before Nintendo. Obviously, this is before cable, really before satellite. There were a couple of channels, and you had to, like, fine-tune them with a secondary dial. So, anyhow. So basically what was going on was there was a Disney on Ice show, like an ice skating sort of performance thing with everyone dressed as Disney characters, and this was, like, just mind-blowing. And my mom and dad wanted to take my sister and I. My sister is about 1.5 years, 2 years younger than me, and they wanted to take us to see this Disney on Ice show. And again, this is like very late 80s. This is before the era of the internet. This is before the era of, I don't even know if Ticketmaster was around. I mean, stuff like this you would actually mail off to get. And what was happening is, and again, there's no DVR. We're just doing like a TV over an antenna. And so what we're doing is, anytime my sister or I would see this Disney on Ice commercial, we would both just, like, scream at our parents to come get the information, and they would, like, grab a piece of paper and a pencil, and they'd come running in, and by that time the commercial is over, and so there was, like, this game, and this is, like I said, one of my very earliest memories. I was probably 3 or 4 years old, something like that, 5 years old at most, but I don't even think I was there. And it's so different. Like, nowadays, we're talking about, my wife and I, we usually go and see the Nutcracker, and it's so easy. You open up Google and you just, like, put in your credit card and you pay for it and you're done. And this is an era from before that. Credit cards weren't really a thing back then. You had, I think they called them store cards. So you'd have a Macy's card, and it was a credit card, but you could only use it at Macy's. And then you'd get, like, a bill from Macy's for your credit card. So it wasn't like, and maybe they were around, but they certainly were not common. But it wasn't a thing where you, like, could even call a phone number and buy Disney on Ice tickets. You had to mail a check to them or a money order to them, and then they would mail you the tickets back. So not only do you have to catch this commercial at the exact precise moment to snag the address to send your check to, but then you've got to do it in enough time to where you can mail a letter, which back then it was, 5 days, 6 days, if not longer, and have them process it, have the check clear, and then send the tickets. So you've got to do all this months in advance. And this is, like, going to be in probably pretty much ongoing theme for a lot of this podcast, that back then you really did not have nearly the sense of urgency that we have in society nowadays. You couldn't do it if you had to drive somewhere, right? So you don't have a smartphone. You used maps, and it's even more complicated than that, because you have to, like, get in this frame of mind where if you're going to go to a new doctor, or wherever, you have to, the night before, sit down at your kitchen table and flip through this map and figure out what route you're going to take, and write down notes. You go left on whatever road, and then 4 miles down you turn right on whatever road, and excuse me. And so this isn't something you do on the spot. You don't say, okay, I've got a doctor's appointment in an hour and let's map it and go. I mean, you had to, like, plan everything out in advance, everything. And it goes even deeper than that. Like, something that's so convenient now is Google Maps with traffic. It just blows my mind that you can just type in this address and it tells you with traffic where it connects with other people using Google Maps, and can tell you down to the minute. It's going to take 21 minutes, so okay, I've got another 4 minutes before I have to leave. I mean, there was none of that. There was no way to accomplish that. So if you had to be on time going somewhere, you would always have to leave early, right? You'd map it out the night before. You'd figure out, okay, it's going to, who knows how long it's going to take, because you're looking at a map, so you're kind of just guessing. You don't know what the speed limits are or anything. excuse me. And God, it's just so different to have to live life, or maybe to be able to live life in a way where nothing happens on the spot. And so I think, let's see, we're 10 minutes in. This is really, I think, this is like a test recording, basically. I don't think I'm gonna publish this. I don't even know how to publish it. So I'm gonna stop this here, and I think I'm gonna try to maybe post it somewhere on Reddit and see if there's any interest in continuing this publicly, because if I'm going to do this in pure podcast form for you guys, for the general public, then I'm going to have to sort of have a different style than if I'm doing this as a recording for my my kids. So I'm going to stop this right here, and if this is something you would like to hear more of, certainly post and let me know. This isn't something, I don't think, I doubt people make money off podcasts, but as far as I'm concerned, this is just going to be like a hobby, free time. You just click play. I don't know. You guys tell me, actually, if anyone here knows, tell me how you usually listen to podcasts. I'm probably going to upload this one to YouTube just because I know how to do that. And if you have a better idea, then let me know. So thanks for listening.